Welcome to today's episode of HANSA.newscast. My name is Janne Silden and I'm happy to have Claudia Ohlmeier, Head of Section Class Systematics Data and Operations Center within DNV Maritime. Welcome, Claudia.
Thank you, Janne. Good to be here.
Claudia, before we dive into maritime classification operations, let's start with something light. Do you have a fun fact about yourself that most people might not know?
Well, I think most people don't know that when I studied naval architecture, I always thought working for a classification society must be really boring because you just judge with a red pen what others are doing. And I thought this is something I wouldn't like to work in and see where I am now. So I guess it's a fun fact.
Is there any relation between naval architecture and what you do now?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it is in the end what I'm doing in DNV is also judging the technical situation of a vessel and together with colleagues, of course, evaluating if this is still safe to sail or not. So part of that is definitely also related to strengths, although I must say I have a lot of colleagues in different sections that are much more experienced in that. So, of course, consulting them and talking with them is essential for that job.
DNV is a major player in the maritime industry and a large organization. Could you briefly explain your role within the company and how it fits into DNV's structure?
I'm working in technical support maritime, meaning we are supporting the fleet that is classified or certified with DNV on issues that they are having. Class systematics is in that regard related to, if you want to put it brief, valid certificates so that the vessels are able to travel to sail. And then data and operational center is a little bit maybe not to the core when you go basically to history of classification. But of course, as we all know, data is the money of today and the future. And the operational center is also our way forward in, of course, dealing with remote services as well. So in that regard, what the section is doing and what my colleagues and myself are doing on a daily basis is supporting the fleet and service customers with the needs that are there on a daily business, as well as making sure that the data in our databases that in the end go on the certificates are relevant and are of a good quality, because data is only as valid as the quality and the trust that we can have in this data. And of course, also, there are always new regulations coming up each day, and therefore these translate to certificates. And then we support also how to put that in the current setup and data models of the company.
What are some of the key challenges or initiatives you're leading in your role?
The team is nowadays 15 wonderful colleagues that have different expertise and different points. So one part of the team is involved in our service called DATE, Direct Access to Technical Expert, where our customers can contact us 24/7 on any technical issues related to the ships, questions, and they get answers to this. This also includes remote surveys where we can issue certain statements with the same quality and content as if going on board, so we can do this remotely. This is one part of it. Another part is, as mentioned, regarding the data. So, as you said, data is all about data.
Yes.
But in the end, there is this saying, and I hope I can say that, shit in, shit out. So data is only valid if you can trust the data. And that is, of course, a big part of what we are doing in the team as well. We are looking into the data. In former times, we would have looked at certificates or reports. Nowadays, we are looking at the data in the database and can, of course, use analytic tools, run queries around the whole fleet to see if the data that we have recorded for each and every vessel makes sense. And that allows us also, of course, to support changes that are made to certificates or also implementation of new requirements to make that in a kind of batch way. Of course, we still need and the tremendous work of our surveyors that go on board the vessels, but we can support with administration and also some technical parts from the office.
That sounds like a huge task.
Definitely, it is a big task, and I'm super happy to have these motivated and engaged people that always find tiny improvement area here or a big improvement there, and make sure that we can continue on that path.
You have been a part of DNV for many years, and you witnessed a significant change in the maritime industry. How have technology and digitalization shaped the industry over the years?
Well, from my point of view, I think the shift in the industry is, of course, when I started, it was, how to say it, maybe, on naval architecture. It was a lot on strengths of the ship, on ensuring that the vessel safely gets from port A to port B, that the crew is not harmed. Yeah.
So that fits so well with the nice fun fact about you, because that makes really sense. 20 years ago, with the architecture and then the naval, I didn't think about it. So now I have the link.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, maybe coming back to the fun fact, I was taking the job basically in sales back office, technical support of the sales organization, and it was a 2-year contract. So I was thinking, well, I would love to work in Hamburg. I would love to work in shipping. So maybe having this company on your CV is not too bad. And then, 2 years, and then I can look for a decent job. Never mind. It stayed very decent. So the development, I think, digitalization has a big impact in it. But of course, also all the environmental aspects. So it is much more broad, I would say. I mean, it is including basically management systems, management philosophies with the ISM code. You have the labor laws with the ILO conventions. You have, of course, MARPOL is longer than 20 years in force, but it's further developing. And of course, we have these carbon index calculations that are now in force, that are driving us a lot in the industry and also change our way of working and our support that we are offering to the customers. And then I think another big topic is cybersecurity. So maritime is, I think, a good mirror of what is going on in the world and in our daily lives, and has so many interactions, but also special fields that, it's more and more connected. Whereas I would say 30, 40 years ago, the ship was outside of our daily life. And I think also COVID showed a lot the impact of shipping, thinking about 80 to 90% of our goods that we are consuming every day are shipped around the world. And if there is a breakup in the supply chain, this has an effect.
In your role, how does DNV help clients integrate digital tools into their operations?
When we introduced electrical certificates, for example, that was also a project that one of my colleagues was heavily involved with. So, of course, we supported at that time tremendously also all customers with integrating that in the daily life, changing from paper certificates to that certificates. Also, of course, when it comes to digitalization, the remote surveys is I think, big advantage for the industry to be able to handle whatever can fall in that category and to avoid delays in that regard.
Looking ahead, what do you think will be the biggest challenge for maritime in the next decade?
Where to start, right? I think there are multiple layers to this. First of all, the world is so much interconnected nowadays. So I think there are not too many maritime specifics. Geopolitics, the election in the US will have an effect. What we also see with inflation, but also with certain areas, sanctions, certain areas where it's not safe to sail or travel anymore. So I think the challenge is called uncertainty, which is, of course, always a challenge because nobody can look ahead. But it looks like the opportunities, but also the threats are tripling by the minute. And when we, for example, look at the outcome of the election in the US, of course, there are, I think, in every mind also questions like, what impact will that have on the Paris agreements regarding cutting of emissions? So I think that is a really big challenge, not only for maritime, but for the world itself. And of course, these uncertainties make it also difficult for our industry to move ahead in what I would say right direction. Then, of course, what we also see is there are a lot of innovations. Again, another uncertainty is still technology. Even if all of us agree that we should follow the climate agreements that we have, and I'm totally supporting this, there is, of course, no solution yet. And the question is, what will be the technology that brings us there, and how many will it be? Is there only one? And going from there, of course, all other industry in the transport sector need alternative fuels. So the biofuels are very limited. The capacity is very limited because we are still also on a learning curve to how to produce them, and only will come in a couple of months or years into a scaling sector where the output will be increasing. And therefore, of course, there is also a shortage in that regard. So, yeah, I think that is the bright world, the bright future that we are going through. And maybe just briefly also, again, not only limited to maritime, but the workforce issue. Who would like to work in maritime? Where are our specialists? And is a technical or a operational job in our business interesting for the generations to come? So I think it's multiple layers and very interesting times.
Yes, I think that summarizes very well. Interesting times. Are you optimistic?
I am. But I'm struggling sometimes at the moment. I think it's very, very interesting times. And then I'm thinking, okay, what I should ask my parents how interesting they find the times, for example, in the 80s, because there were also quite some politic changes and the reunion of Germany. So I think you could agree, or if you go back in history, you will see a lot of troubled times. I have a little bit the feeling that our time is special, of course, because we are special. No, but because also of the layers of complexity. I mean, I think we all love the connection that we are having, that we can do, I don't know, online banking, or, you know, doing a chat via the phone with video and seeing our loved ones or seeing colleagues that live abroad and all this. But of course, it comes with a price. And this price of connectivity is cybersecurity. So towards all the complexity and interesting times we had in the past, I think digitalization adds, again, opportunity and threats to it and makes it more complex. And we have this saying, you need to slice the elephant in pieces to solve it. But sometimes I feel a little bit overwhelmed, but on the other hand, the sun will rise tomorrow. So
yeah, but that's also what you're working on now. What you're doing with all the collecting of data, getting the right data, not getting the, for using your words, the shit.
Sorry for that.
I think that adds the layer to the complexity. But let's move on. You were already into it, but with the tighter environmental and safety regulations shaping the industry, do you see these changes being primarily driven by regulators like, or classification societies like DNV, or are companies within the maritime sector taking the lead in driving the needed transformation?
Well, my first thought is it's a difficult question. Thank you for that. But starting to think a little bit about it, I mean, innovation, if we think a bit and go back in time, 200, 2000, 20,000 years, there were no regulations. but there was innovation. So I think first I thought it's a hen-egg question, but I think it's not. I think innovation is driven by people that either see a need to change or see an opportunity for innovation or see a danger if not changing. So I would say innovation is driven by people. And these people, fortunately, work in companies. And I would definitely include DNV in that list of companies that are driving innovations. And of course, there is like with everything, there is a sunny side of this, and there is also a dark side of it. The sunny side is definitely that you go a path that is not yet a path. So you're making a path. You're taking the journey of learning something, innovating something, which is the whole idea about it. But of course, innovation is the end result of a process of investing something. And as we all know, especially the finance people know, if you invest zero money somewhere, you will not make money. And the same is with innovations. So when you start to think about a new technology or a new way of doing stuff, there is failure. And from this failure, you learn. And you need a certain set of learning in order to innovate then a valid new product or a valid new way of working, process, whatever you call it. And this costs money. And this also, of course, means that there are certain innovations you do in your companies that will not bring money to the bank. But the value of that is, of course, that you have an organization and a company that has a thought and a problem analyzing and solving mode that companies who maybe only later go don't have.
Yeah.
So I think the experience and the resilience you build up as an innovative company pay off in a long term, but may not pay off after a quarter of the year when the finance people are coming and saying, okay, what kind of cash do we have? So I think it is definitely the people and the people in these companies that drive innovations. And for me, the environmental and safety regulations that are coming make sure that we move ahead. So they are kind of the safety net that ensures that we then all move in the right direction and further innovate and develop as an industry.
Do you have an example of how you have cooperated with innovators or companies and regulators, and you could say brought it forward? I once joined, I think it was an online seminar with DNV where we were just talking about carbon capture and all these things on new technology, and I just had a feeling that DNV is really in the forefront of highlighting technology available. What is your thoughts about that?
How could I say anything against that, right? No, but I think if you look also at the leadership of DNV, I think this is one of the reasons why I'm still working for this company or for classification. There are multiple answers and examples, I would say, to this one. So, for example, of course, we have always the forecasts, energy transition forecast. We have also forecasts for biofuels and availability of these items. So I would say this is on the high end of it. And this is exactly what I was mentioning before about believing in certain needs to change. So DNV as a company is strongly driven by the goal to decarbonize. And because of that strong belief from the top to every single person in the experts level, we of course do different things. So one thing is these forecasts, where we also have like panel discussion and online seminars with different leaders. And I think the role of DNV in that regard is also being a platform, and a platform for people to meet, but also a platform for standards and for trust to exchange data. Another example comes from plan approval. So last year, DNV launched together with 8 other companies OCX standard, and this standard defines how you are modeling a ship in order to make it easier to use this file throughout the whole process. So before, the designer would do the drawings 2D wise in their software, whatever the software they used, obviously, and then DNV and the other class societies would get a 2D drawing. Of course, they would do 3D models and everything, but we need certain classification drawings in order to ensure that the design is in compliance with the regulations. And then DNV might have done another model on it for also other things. And then the shipyard might do another model of it. So because a software and a model in this software is like a person speaking one language. So we always needed a translator, or we always need a translator who translates what this one software is doing to the other software that the other company is using. By agreeing on this OCX standard, we're using the same language, and therefore we can trust in that language, and we can use this common language, which will, of course, also increase the production time on all sides.
Sounds like a nice project, but wow, it's also complex, the whole process.
Well, the project started 2016, so they were running for 7 years. And again, this is the investment I was talking about, that these 9 companies, as a joint industry project, saw a need or saw an opportunity and invested their time to come there. Another thing is, for example, we have a service called Emission Connect, which allows the ship owners and managers to have a platform to bring together all the measurements regarding the emissions and also share them with their stakeholders. For example, the charterer, who needs to have a reliable report on the CO2 print of the cargo that they are shipping from A to B. So as this is for the end consumer interesting, we need, of course, to have it all along the supply chain. But how do we ensure that we can trust and that the different results we are getting on the journey, again, speak the same language? So with this platform, DNV is also, again, offering a service to do that. And yeah, that are just some examples.
Thank you. Switching gears to another important topic, women in the maritime. It's no secret we are still in the minority. And as the chairwoman of Vista Germany, how do you see the role of women evolving in the shipping industry?
Well, positive. Positive and optimistic. Well, I mean, it was such a pleasure to be the chairwoman from 2018 to 2022. And I'm still engaged in the Vista Germany mentoring program. So I think one part of that is that we see there is a lot of, and not only Vista, but there is a lot of support on women in maritime. And definitely I see also there are more women compared to 20 years ago when I started. Also in my naval architecture study, it was a small group, but we were 30 people. Out of these 30, it was 4 women. So in the MINT study opportunities, that more and more women are coming, especially I think with all the IT study possibilities, there are more women there. And we in maritime also need more different skill sets than only chief engineers and mechanical engineers and electrical engineers, with all the new technology on board. Of course, for a ballast water management system, you need also biologists for the treatment system and stuff like this. So I think with opening up that the ship is more like a own city, there are also more opportunities for women. And again, with a focus in general to have also more women in technical jobs, it is positive. And I think we have to make sure that this goes further on. And maybe it's not only limited really to women. I think it's also a fact of societies seeing the potential of each individual and seeing that it's a benefit to be colorful.
Yeah, I like that. Colorful. And I think the industry could need that.
Yeah, there is a lot of golden buttons and blue
Yeah,
gray and black.
Dressers, yes. Yeah. No, let's not go down that road.
But we like all colors, also the blue and the gray, right?
Yeah, and the white and blue skirts. And
definitely also that.
But from a leadership perspective, what qualities do you think are essential to drive meaningful change in this area?
Very good question. I think the key for me and from my learning path maybe is two things. The one thing is the change from an individual contributor to a leader is sometimes a little bit tricky because you're getting promoted because of the individual work that you were doing. Of course, also in a team set, but you were an individual contributor of a team. Whereas a leader, I think you do a perfect job if the work's running smoothly and nobody sees that you are at the beach enjoying life. No, meaning that I think, the key value of leadership is that you ensure that your colleagues have all the resources and possibilities they need to fulfill their job. And I think in that respect, it's also important to remind myself, but also all who are listening now, that it's not about equality. It's about making sure each person has the chance to develop. So as we know, one solution does not fit all. That means some people are so self-motivated and self-driven, or maybe have so much experience already in one area that they don't need a lot of support, whereas others are just starting to develop in that area and, of course, need also the chances to blossom and to shine. And I think that is very important in that system, because especially under stress, of course, you're tempted to give work to somebody that you know that works maybe equally to the style that I work myself. And I know with 3 words I can hand over the project and it will be sufficient. But maybe another person will innovate and needs a little bit longer. Maybe also the handover needs longer, because you first have to understand and have to get to know each other. But then in the end, you will not only get a good product, but you will get more that will ensure the further development. So I think that is the big challenge that we are having in leadership compared to managing.
It fits with what you mentioned with colorful. So more colors, more way of doing it, if you make that parallel.
Sometimes the colorful is also a little bit overwhelming. And I think that makes it then less desirable. But honestly, I'm of the opinion, and most of the time, that is very short-term thinking.
Yeah, if you shouldn't just have one favorite color, should you?
Very true.
Reflecting on your impressive career, what would you say has been your biggest success?
I would say biggest success is the network of people that I build up over time, because there is so much joy and value in the contacts inside and DNV, of course, but also outside, to know to whom to go and where to go and being helped. I think that is something I'm really proud of. Also, of course, that I get the same feedback, that people come to me and value my input and viewpoints is definitely something I'm proud of. Speaking a little bit more in detail, I was spending the last 10 years on a topic called port state control within DNV, and was responsible for all topics of port state control regarding DNV, but also for the last couple of years we're presenting Ajax, so the International Association of Class Societies, at the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, for specifically the topic of port state control. And I think in that regard, there are also 2 more specific things I'm proud of, I would say. So one is a service that DNV is offering towards our customers. It's called PSC Planner, which is a supporting tool for the ship managers to see, to benchmark how well is the fleet doing compared to other ship types, but also giving very specific support for kind of preparation checks. So that is one thing. And just recently, also related to that topic, of course, COVID had a big impact on the maintenance of vessels because surveyors, superintendents, flag inspectors, but also service engineers couldn't go on board. So, of course, there was a lot of impact on the maintenance of vessels, which resulted, especially in 2022, in a high amount of PSC detentions for the whole industry and also for us in DNV. So we have a focus and we have, of course, take this port state control detentions also as a ratio to measure our quality as DNV in the services that we are offering. And we saw an increase, and we worked hard for 2 years to bring that back to normal, back to pre-COVID. And this is also something I'm very proud of. Of course, all of this is not done by me only, but there is a great team of colleagues that we did this as a success story together. I would say this is the most measurable topics that I could talk about.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for sharing your insights and experience with us today. It's been a pleasure having you at HANSA Newscast.
Oh, thank you, Janne. I really enjoyed the talk. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.